Welcome to the second ever build video that I'm posting here to YouTube. Today we're going to be building the Ford Racing Puma. Yes, I know, the most desired car for B-Class Road. I know that you guys have been dying to see this car be built. You know, I know it's like the most attractive car in this game. So here we are building the Ford Racing Puma in B-Class. Of note, when building this car, feel free to kind of take this strategy that I'm going to kind of describe here and apply it to pretty much any other front-wheel drive car in B-Class. You know, other notable ones would be like the Lancia Fulvia and obviously the 74 Civic and whatnot. But just for today's sake, we're going to be building the Ford Racing Puma. So let's jump right into it. The key to this build, let me go ahead and not waste your time here. The key to these builds is to keep these cars front-wheel drive, so you want to keep the drivetrain the same, and to put drag slicks on the car. And I know it sounds insane. Drag slicks in B-Class sounds like way too much handling, but there's just some way that this game isn't able to understand the fact that drag slicks on 2 tires is basically the same as drag slicks on 4, particularly when it's front-wheel drive, with the way the handling works and whatnot. So drag slicks in B-Class, you gotta trust me on this one. I'm gonna walk you through the build. I'm gonna show you how good this car is. There are better models, but again, for this sake, Ford Racing Puma obviously is the most attractive one. So like, I mean, come on. Come on, look at this thing. All right, so drag slicks. That's what we're going to start with, and then we're going to back out and go all the way back to the right, just like we normally do, because that's how we read, is right to left. So we are going to look at this car, and we're going to say, what engine do we want? Of course, we definitely don't want the 1.6-liter inline-4 turbo rally. It's like the worst engine in the game, but it's fine. You could put in the 2-liter inline-4 turbo. From my experience, the stock powertrain was the best engine to keep into this car for this kind of build. In the next part, you want to go ahead and put in the positive displacement supercharger, because the deal here is when you have a car like this on drag slicks in B-Class, the handling is absurd. It's way more handling than you need, so our focus here is to get as much power in the car as possible. And what that means is to get as much weight in the car as possible as well, so that way the game doesn't think that you have a ridiculous amount of power on such little weight and then the PI shoots up. So to be able to get more power, we're also going to put more weight into the car, and since the positive displacement supercharger is heavier, it's better for PI in terms of this specific build. So we're going to go ahead and throw that in. And when we get to the aero and appearance here, it really is up to you how you want to do it. Obviously, this is the most attractive car in the game, so you can feel free to leave it as such. Or you could, do things like putting on the headlights, because we all know that each extra headlight and each extra drift decal is another 2 horsepower into the car. So, I mean, I don't blame you if you want to put the headlights on. Increasing the weight from this perspective is, as far as I can tell, up to your preference. The top speed doesn't really increase as you add weight to the car from the aero and appearance side. Yes, you could put more power in the car, but the top speed's pretty much going to top out 164 miles an hour regardless. So again, I'll leave it up to you if you want to go ahead and put things on like the headlights and the front ram bar and, side skirts and whatnot. The rear aero is not worth it from a top speed to PI perspective, which again, this car is already going to handle way better than you need it to. So you really do want to just focus on getting that top speed up higher, above 164 if you can. And the rear aero is going to be detrimental in that endeavor. So as far as I can tell, not worth the PI. But for the rest of them, the front bumper, the side skirts, and the hood, I'll leave that up to you if you want to apply those. And I'll go through what's the best way to do that later. For now, I'm going to leave it looking as gorgeous as its stock does, and we're going to move on to the wheels. We're going to move over to the rear tire width, and obviously max it out because you get some PI back for increasing weight, which is the premise of this build, but also thanks Forza. I guess this is a front-wheel drive car, so having the extra rear tire width doesn't really affect anything. Adds a little stability to the car, though. And then next thing, we're going to move on to the rims, and when we want to go for heavy rims, we use Compomotive M05 because it's the quickest way to put on the heaviest rims, and they they fit the car. They fit the look of the car. They look great. Honestly, it looks great. Like the rest of this car, the rims look great. So you put on the heaviest rims. Go ahead and do the upgraded rear track width because it's free. Other than money, in terms of PI, it's free. And then leave the front tire width and front track width as stock. Next, moving over to the drivetrain, we're gonna go straight over to the right to the differential and put in the race differential so that we can do some tuning later on, and it costs 0 PI. And the next thing we want to do is put in the sport transmission. The street and the race transmission costs too much PI to be worth it. And you actually get a PI back to lose 2 pounds and get the ability to tune final drive. So again, quirk in Forza, I'm capitalizing on it. I'm going to also put in 1 street drive line, and no need to put in any extra clutch because again, as with all of my builds, we drive manual with clutch, which basically completely gets rid of the need of this other than for weight reduction purposes. So we're going to be skipping over the clutch on all of my builds. Moving over to the platform and handling, we're going to obviously skip brakes because we have drag slicks in B class, and this is frankly a handling build. We're going to skip springs as well because they handle well enough. And we're going to move right into the anti-roll bars. Race anti-roll bars should be no surprise given the way that we tune them. I skip the chassis reinforcement and roll cage. Feel free to shame me at about this time because I know at the start of this build I said that we're going to make it as heavy as possible, which would fit this specifically in it. But it's not worth the PI, so I skipped that. Weight reduction. That kind of defeats the entire purpose. Like I've been saying this whole time, we're trying to make it as heavy as possible, so we skip the weight reduction. And engine upgrades. Move all the way over to the right, skip the flywheel, because what the heck. Oil and cooling adds weight to the car with extra power, so we do that. Intercooler adds weight to the car with extra horsepower, so we do that. Positive displacement supercharger adds a little bit of weight to the car, so I do that as well, and it's great for a PI perspective. And then the rest of these upgrades do not add weight to the car. And so from here, I'm going to be doing upgrades that keep the weight the same because there are some that reduce the weight, like the intake and the exhaust. So since the ignition and the fuel system keep the weight the same, I'm going to put those in, and you're going to see, hey, B700. It looks nice and fine and dandy. And that's where I end the build here when you're doing a no aero build. On the contrary, if you wanted to do aero, you would throw on this street front bumper, you would throw on the side skirts, and you would throw on the lights or some combination of such. If you do all of those, then what you can fit in is one of the displacement upgrades. It's typically not great from a PI perspective, but it's the best way to get the best horsepower into the car while keeping, a heavy weight. Obviously, we don't want to keep a heavy weight, right? Like if we could reduce the weight, we would, but none of the other upgrades that you can put in with these specific builds allow you to get any more or even the same horsepower because they reduce the weight. So in this case, 1 engine block upgrade. So that's the best way, the best 2 ways I've found to build this car, whether you do or don't want aero. I'm going to set this back to without aero because that's my preferred method. Again, if you can get a higher top speed out of one or the other, do that because that's the main limiting factor on this car. The bottleneck of this car is its top speed. So we're going to install this. As I do with all of my videos, I've already bought all these parts before, so you don't see the price of this. However, if you cared to know, it's about 90,000 credits. And then go down here to tuning, and we'll fine-tune the car. You guys, I know you guys love and know how to do this best, so when you want to fine-tune the tire pressure, what you really got to do is go nice and slowly and just throw it down to 15, because it's just the best tire pressure. Skipping over the gearing and going to the end first, because the gearing is what I'm going to do last to make sure that the top speed's the best it can be. We're going to go all the way right to differential, and we're going to set the acceleration to 100 and the deceleration to 3%. Definitely call me out on this if I'm an idiot. Best I can tell, 100 is the best. One of my friends said that 3% is better on the deceleration side, and I can't be okay. And I can't be bothered to test him on that, so I went with 3%, and I can't imagine it really makes much of a difference. No brakes because we have drags in B class. No aero because we have drags in B class. No springs because we have drags in B class. Anti-roll bars, like the tires, you really want to fine tune them just like we always do and throw them up to 165. Alignment, again, no springs because drags in B class. And the last thing that we're going to tune is the final drive. Again, as I've been saying earlier, the crucial part to this car is the top speed. So if you want to leave it somewhere in this range to technically get 166, feel free. But the way I typically tune my top speeds is I find the point where it starts decreasing the top speed from more than small increments. So you see here, the final drive is set to 3.5, top speed's 164. As we increase it by 1 increment, the top speed only drops by 1/10 of a mile an hour. Do the same again, and it drops by 1/10 of a mile an hour. Do the same again, and it drops by 3/10. So that's the critical point for the top speed. So I like to keep it somewhere in this range of, in this case, 3.52 or a bit lower. So I'm going to give it a little bit more top speed and get it going about 165. So I set the final drive to 3.38 and get that 165 top speed, but really anything in the range of about 3.2 to 3.5, and you should be good with your final drive. So we're going to apply that, and we're going to back out and run a little bit of a test with it. My favorite test, and shout out to it being winter, is to just hop out of the festival site and just straight gas it all the way out here and up to the speed trap up here. And what this kind of allows you to do is get a general idea of the acceleration and in some sense the top speed of the car that you're driving. But the key to it then, to be able to get the understanding of the car's handling, is to then take it down the hill to the right. So I went 141 at the trap, which is a little bit low for B class, but this car is able to take this turn down the hill extremely flat. Like there's just, you don't have to let off the gas or anything. So again, this car handles extremely well. So if you're not doing a drag slicked B-class car, front wheel drive or whatever it might be, then you probably do have less handling and you should be going faster at the trap if you've got, say, stock tires and whatnot. So what I like to shoot for on those cars is 150 plus, but in this car's case, it handles so well that it can take pretty much any turn at 140 miles an hour, which is more than can be said with my other cars that I test at 150 miles an hour across that trap. So does well at the test. Again, it looks great. The car looks great. So feel free to enjoy. Before I head out, let's run a test with another one of these front-wheel drive cars. Let's try the Lancia Fulvia. So this Lancia Fulvia is built the same way as the Racing Puma that I just described, but the upside to this Lancia Fulvia is that it's got a much higher top speed. So as you'll see here when I get to the trap, it will do more than 141 miles an hour, and it'll still be able to handle all of that speed down the hill. Again, this Lancia Fulvia is a sleeper that I would recommend, and in this case it does 148 at the trap, so it's got a little better acceleration, a little better top speed, and likewise it's able to just haul down this hill with no issues. So I guess that's pretty much it. If you guys enjoyed these videos, leave some recommendations of what cars you want to see me build next. If you don't like these videos, then 20 minutes into recording, why are you still here? But again, if you do like the videos, I plan to be making more of these when I get time. So feel free to leave some recommendations down below. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys around, and if you want more of my content beyond these build videos, feel free to follow me on Twitch with the link down below. Thanks, guys. See ya.